He rode into town with the late afternoon sun stretched long and tired behind him, dust clinging to his boots, and the weight of goodbye riding heavier than his saddle. The horse beneath him was a good one, strong, flanked, and steady-eyed, the kind of horse a man only sold when he was done running or done hoping. And as the town of Dust Creek came into view, low wooden buildings crouched against the wind like they had learned not to expect much from the world. He told himself this was just business. Sell the horse, take the money, move on, no reason to linger, no reason to look back. The hitching post groaned when he tied the reins. The horse flicked an ear like it knew something he did not, and the man rested his hand against its warm neck a second longer than necessary. He had ridden with this animal through rain that felt like needles and nights so cold the stars cracked like glass. Selling him felt like tearing loose the last thread of a life already unraveling. But he squared his shoulders anyway. A man named Mercer did not stay anywhere long. That was the rule he had made after losing everything worth staying for. Dust Creek smelled of coffee gone bitter on the stove, and horses that had seen too many hard miles. Boots scuffed the boardwalk as he passed. A few heads turned. Strangers always drew eyes in towns this small. He kept his gaze forward, hat brim low, the sail first, then gone by morning. That was the plan. But plans had a way of cracking the moment you believed in them too hard. The livery owner, a bent man with tobacco-stained fingers, circled the horse slow and thoughtful, asking the usual questions: age, temperament, miles. Cole answered short and plain, his voice carrying the grit of places left behind. They haggled without heat, both men knowing the value of a good horse and the sadness that sometimes came with one. When the deal was done and the money pressed into Cole's palm, it felt colder than it should have, lighter than it ought to be, like it was missing something that could not be counted. He was turning away, already halfway back to the boardwalk, when a voice stopped him, not loud, not sharp, just steady, like it belonged where it was. "You selling that horse?" The words carried a calm certainty that made him look despite himself. She stood a few paces away, dust on her skirt, hair pinned up with more practicality than vanity. Her eyes were the kind that had learned patience the hard way, grey-edged with blue, measuring him without fear or invitation already sold. He said, meaning it to end there, but she nodded like she had expected that. "Shame," she replied. "He looks like he carried you a long way." Something in her tone loosened a knot in his chest he had not known was there. Most folks saw a horse and thought of price. She saw history. He tipped his hat out of habit, not courtesy, and asked if she needed anything else. Hoping she would say no instead, she smiled, not wide, not coy, just enough to soften the dust-worn lines of her face. "I owned the boarding house at the end of Maine," she said. "If you're staying the night, supper's hot, and the beds are clean." He almost laughed. Staying was not something he did, but the word supper stirred a hunger deeper than his stomach, and the way she said clean made it sound like a promise. He told her he would think on it, already knowing that meant he would not yet as he walked away, money in his pocket and nowhere in particular to go. He felt the strange pull of something unfinished, like a song cut off before the last chord. He glanced back once. She was still there, watching him go with a look that said she understood leaving better than most. Mercer did not know it yet, but that ride into Dust Creek, meant to last only an hour or two, had already started bending into something else entirely, something that would ask more of him than a sail and a goodbye. Cole told himself he would not stay the night. He told himself that while his boots carried him down Main Street anyway, past the Mercantile with its faded sign and the saloon with laughter leaking through the batwing doors, the town moved around him at an unhurried pace, like it had nowhere better to be, and that unsettled him more than gunfire ever had. He was used to places that pushed men out as fast as they pulled them in. Dust Creek did neither. It simply waited. When he reached the boarding house she had mentioned, a modest two-story building with lace curtains that had seen better years, he stopped without knowing why, maybe because the windows glowed warm against the coming dusk, or maybe because for the first time in a long while, no one was chasing him onward. She answered the door herself, apron tied neat, sleeves rolled just enough to show forearms marked by work. "Not softness. You decided to stay," she said. Not a question, just a fact spoken gently. He hesitated, feeling like a man stepping into a river whose depth he could not judge. "Just for the night," he replied, and she nodded again like that was exactly how these things always began. The dining room smelled of stew and fresh bread. The sound of cutlery and low voices drifted from inside. She took his hat without ceremony and led him in, introducing him to no one, and somehow that felt right, like she was protecting him from being known too quickly. At supper he sat among strangers who did not pry, families passing bread, a traveling salesman nursing sore feet, a quiet older man who tipped his cup in greeting and nothing more. The woman, her name he learned was Clara Hale, moved between tables with practiced ease, checking plates, refilling cups, her presence steadying the room like a hearth fire. When she finally sat across from him with her own bowl, she ate slowly, listening more than speaking. He told her pieces of the truth, that he was passing through, that he had sold his horse, that he would be moving on come morning. She accepted each statement without comment, though her eyes lingered when he spoke of leaving, as if she had heard that promise break before later. With night fully settled and the boarders drifting off to their rooms, Clara poured coffee and sat with him by the window, the lamplight catching strands of hair that had slipped loose. "Dust Creek gets men like you from time to time," she said. "Men running from something or toward nothing." He stiffened, but she did not press. Instead, she spoke of the boarding house, how it had been hers since her husband passed, how the town had helped her keep it when grief nearly folded her in half. He listened in a way he had not listened to anyone in years, because she did not ask him to explain his scars. She only acknowledged that they existed. Sleep came uneasy, filled with dreams of hoofbeats fading into dark. When dawn crept through the thin curtains, Cole was already awake, sitting on the edge of the bed with his boots in his hands. The money from the horse lay on the nightstand, stacked neat and accusing. He had planned to leave early, before conversation could make things complicated, but when he stepped downstairs, Clara was already up, kneading dough, flour dusting her cheek. "Leaving so soon?" she asked, not stopping her hands. He hesitated again, the silence stretching between them, and in that space he realized something dangerous, that leaving now would feel less like freedom and more like loss. He stayed for breakfast, then for another cup of coffee. Then, because Clara mentioned a fence that needed mending out back, and he offered without thinking, his hands remembered the work easily, the rhythm grounding him. She watched from the porch, offering no praise, just quiet company. As the sun climbed higher, townsfolk passed and nodded. Someone asked if he would be around a while. He answered with a shrug, but inside, something was shifting, settling into place with an almost frightening rightness. He had not planned on usefulness, had not expected to feel wanted for what he could do rather than what he could survive by afternoon. Word had spread that the stranger was handy. The livery owner stopped by to ask about a bulky gate. A shopkeeper needed help unloading crates. Cole said yes to each without counting the cost. Clara brought him water and stood close enough that he could smell soap and clean cotton. "You don't owe anyone anything," she told him softly, as if sensing his thoughts. He met her gaze then, truly met it, and saw a woman who knew exactly what loneliness could hollow out, and had chosen to build something anyway. The urge to stay rose sharp and uninvited, and it scared him more than any empty horizon ever had. That night, as the town settled and the stars came out thick and bright, Cole stood on the porch beside Clara. The air cooled between them. He told her he had not meant to stop here, not meant to let a single town or person matter again. She smiled sadly. "Sometimes the road decides for us," she said, and in that moment he understood the truth he had been circling since he rode in, that selling the horse had been the easy part. The harder thing would be deciding whether he was brave enough to trade running for staying, and whether Dust Creek and the woman beside him were worth the forever he had sworn he no longer believed in. The past did not announce itself politely. It rode into Dust Creek hard and loud on a morning meant for calm. Cole was splitting wood behind the boarding house when the sound of unfamiliar horses cut through the quiet. 3 men dismounted near the saloon, their posture wrong for travelers, their eyes searching. Cole felt the old instinct flare, the one that never truly left. Clara appeared on the porch, worry flickering across her face before she masked it. He met her gaze and knew instantly that whatever peace he had found here was about to be tested, because the kind of life he had lived before always collected debts. One of the men found him by noon, calling his name like it was a challenge. "Cole Mercer, thought you might be hiding out somewhere quiet," the man said, voice edged with old grudges. Cole stepped away from the woodpile, shoulders squared. "Dust Creek does not need this," he replied, but the man only laughed, mentioning things best left buried. A job gone wrong, a partner dead, money that never reached the right hands. Clara stood in the doorway. hearing enough to understand danger without knowing details, when the man threatened to bring trouble down on the town if Cole did not come with them. Something inside him hardened into certainty that night. Cole told Clara the truth, or as much of it as mattered. He spoke of drifting into bad work when grief had left him empty, of choices made because he believed nothing permanent deserved protecting. He expected judgment or fear, maybe both, but Clara only listened, eyes steady, hands folded. When he finished, she said quietly, "You are not that man anymore. This town sees what you do now, not what you ran from." The weight of her faith pressed heavier than accusation ever could, and he realized then that staying meant more than comfort. It meant accountability, something he had avoided for far too long. The men did not wait long. They tried to force the matter the following evening, cornering Cole near the livery, voices raised, hands drifting too close to guns. Townsfolk gathered, tension thick enough to choke on. Before Cole could speak, Clara stepped forward, her voice cutting clean through the noise. "This man belongs here," she said, "and if you bring violence to Dust Creek, you answer to all of us." Something shifted in that moment. The men saw it too, a town united, a man no longer alone. They backed off with threats muttered and pride bruised, riding out the same way they came, leaving silence and relief behind them. In the days that followed, Cole expected the urge to run to return, old habits dying hard, but it did not come. Instead, he found himself repairing things that had been broken to long gates, roofs, trust. He worked alongside townsfolk who treated him like he had always belonged. Clara watched him with a softness that grew into something unspoken and strong. One evening he found her sitting alone after supper, worry lining her face. She admitted she feared loving a man who knew how to leave so well. He took her hands then, rough palms against hers, and promised, not with words alone, but with the truth of his staying. The proposal was simple. No crowd, no grand speech, just the two of them on the porch as dusk settled in. Cole told her he had ridden into town to sell his horse because he believed he had no future worth carrying forward. But Dust Creek had given him one anyway, and she had given him a reason to fight for it. Clara's eyes filled, her smile trembling but sure. "Yes," she said, like she had been waiting to say it all along. The town celebrated quietly, respectfully, as if everyone understood that some love stories did not need shouting. They married beneath a wide sky, the kind that had once called Cole away but now felt like shelter. Townsfolk gathered, laughter and tears mingling easy. Clara wore a simple dress, her strength shining brighter than lace ever could. When Cole spoke his vows, his voice did not waver, because for the first time, he was not promising something he feared he could not keep. He was choosing it fully, freely, forever. Years later, people would say that Cole Mercer rode into Dust Creek to sell his horse and somehow lost himself instead. What they meant was that he found something better, a home built, not from escape, but from staying, from choosing love over distance. When he looked at Clara, older now, still steady, he knew the truth. That forever was never about the road you traveled, but the moment you decided to stop riding past happiness and finally claim it as your own.